I just need to read through our hearing script, just covers the procedure of the hearing, then we'll jump right into it. And this is the March 30th, 2022 session of the zoning hearing examiner docket. My name is David Sturkey. I'm the zoning hearing examiner for the city of Cincinnati, and I'll preside over this hearing. The case before us today is case number ZH20220029. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and opposing parties to testify and to offer a few evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and the supplemental rules of the zoning hearing examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any opposing party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. The applicant, the applicant's attorney, or the applicant's agent will first present the applicant's case. If there were anyone here from the public, they would have an opportunity to testify after the applicant had presented its case. In the event, I'll give the zoning administrator and the A House an opportunity to testify, in addition to Doug's staff report, if she would like. In the event that any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to an application, the applicant shall have an opportunity to rebut that testimony and or argument offered in opposition. And then finally, the applicant will have an opportunity to make any closing statements. After all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or make any comments. I may also refuse to consider hearsay testimony. That's generally evidence you want to introduce that consists of statements made by someone who's not present at the hearing today. In the event of any technical difficulties with the Zoom, I'll do my best to troubleshoot those on the fly, but to the extent there's some defect that prevents us from me fully going forward with the hearing, I may continue or postpone the hearing at my discretion. Okay, last thing I need to do is just swear in all of our witnesses. If you intend on providing any testimony here today, doing anything other than just strictly observing, then you need to be sworn in. So if that's you, if you could take yourself off mute, need everyone to answer out loud, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great, great. All right, who's going to take the lead for us here today on the presentation?
Zach, do you want to start just to introduce the project, and then I can jump in on the zoning letter where we're responding to Doug?
Sure. Can everyone hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, awesome. So this project is Peebles Apartments, which is 42 units of affordable housing located over ground floor commercial space and some residential uses, as well as some units along the back side. It was funded with 9% LIDIC, so tax credit funds. It's restricted to residents who are 60% AMI or below. It's meant to be a part of a larger development along to on the former Kroger site, but this is our first phase of development, which was highly demanded by the neighborhood, that we start with the affordable housing component of the project. And therefore, that's where we're at right now. We're currently have all of our funding in place to do the construction, and we're looking forward to closing and starting construction in September of this year. So that's why we've started this process here now and came about from getting our permit. So.
Okay, thanks, Zach.
So I'm going to just kind of run through our response letter to issues raised by Doug Owen on his zoning review. And why we're asking for these variances. So the first was multifamily residential only being permitted behind an allowable ground floor space and asking for a locational variance. The building is set up, as Zach was saying, that we would have only residential units, the actual apartments, along the back of the building. So along the Gilbert Avenue frontage, there is some commercial space, and then there's some kind of fitness and community room amenity spaces for the residential. I think those are what the zoning is kind of objecting to, but we're asking for the locational variance because we're trying to continue an appearance of kind of a storefront across the front of the building, have it be open rather than having it be masonry or some other material and very closed up in order to get residential along that street frontage. But these are necessary spaces for the whole development, and putting them in this space along the street front kind of continues that look of openness for continuation from the commercial area.
Gotcha. So just to follow up on that, you're saying that the code does not allow for residential uses on the ground floor on street frontage, and you have some that are residential on the street frontage. Correct. Along Gilbert?
Yes.
Not actual, so it's not actual units along Gilbert, it's community space for the residents. So it's a community room with a kitchenette where they can have their meetings and gatherings and events for the residents, and then also a fitness area which serves the residents above. So there's no actual dwelling units along the Gilbert frontage on the ground floor.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Thanks.
We've actually been in conversation with our office with some people from zoning just about affordable projects and how this is kind of one of these catches that is written into zoning, but to do an affordable project, these spaces are needed, and having them on the first floor, it's kind of the kind of logical way to go about it. So it is kind of an understandable issue written into zoning code, but we're trying to kind of discuss what hardships that might give to an affordable project in specificity.
Gotcha. Okay. And there is some commercial space too on the Gilbert frontage. Is that right? Okay.
That is true.
Right.
Half of the quarter of the first floor. Would you like me to share any plans while we're at this? Or?
I mean, yeah, if you think it'll help as we go along, sure. I welcome that. It's totally up to you, however you want to present it.
You're able to see the screen now?
We can, yep.
So this is the kind of the center of the building is the main entry for residential. This quadrant of the building down here is a tenant space, commercial space with kind of openness along the Gilbert frontage. And then this quadrant at the front of the building, we have commercial space, fitness, laundry, just a lot of the amenity spaces for the community of residents who will live here. But again, keeping the kind of openness, although you don't have passage into those spaces as you do in the commercial off of the sidewalk. And then the back of the building, interior to the larger property development, there are some units on that floor. So this is where we just feel that having units on that frontage would be kind of closing off the building to the sidewalk.
Okay.
The next item on Doug Owen's list was a dimensional variance of 5 feet for a front yard setback of 5 feet, short of the 0 foot requirement. Here again, I'm going to try to find a image to share with you, but we had presented this to the neighborhood committee and the neighborhood council.
We submitted this variance request. I think it was the letter of support was included in the application, but we went through a pretty extensive community engagement process, and then we went through probably 5 or 6 meetings presenting our progress to them just overall, and they approved this request as well, just just for reference, we did go through the community council and then the planning and development committee that is a subcommittee of them, and made them aware of all of our progress and all of our requests for variances as well.
So the reason for the request for this variance is the utility lines that run along Gilbert Avenue are approximately, the poles are mounted approximately 18 inches to the center line of the poles off the street edge. When you get to the top of that, to the high power lines at the top of those poles, they tee off and project towards the building and out into the street. So we're requesting that dimensional variance logistically, just to be able to build this structure and have scaffolding and be safe in doing so. We had proposed to the neighborhood that would not be a planted area where we asked for that variance. It would just be a continuation of the sidewalk to the building front.
Okay, so with the utility lines where they are, you're saying it would be impossible or impractical to build the lot line there?
Yeah, I think that model has had some, and Joe, Zach, you can chime in here, but they've had a lot of communication and past experience where utility lines are temporarily laid back in order to do some work, but with the high power lines, it's still going to be an issue that we feel this is necessary to get this building built along that street edge, short of, burying power lines.
So there's basically a secondary line and the high tension lines up top, which are the ones that are more concerned. When the building would be done, it would be within the limits that Duke doesn't typically allow those lines to be within, obviously for safety reasons and arcing. So I think we were able to set it back, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but I think we were pretty much aligning with the adjacent building, so it wasn't a drastic setback that would be noticed by anyone.
That's right.
Yes. And I'm going to share screen again real quickly. This is an image that we shared with the community. So we have the poles are at about 18 to 2 feet. They kind of vary along the edge of the street. The existing sidewalk, it varies as well, but is approximately 12 feet to the property line. So we're asking for additional 5 feet, which would just be panelized sidewalk as it is here. But as Joe was saying, the Paramount building is not exactly at that property line. I don't have that dimension at the moment. And the Alexandra building, which is north of our proposed building, sits at an angle to the Gilbert frontage. So nothing along that front edge of the Alexandra is at the property line.
Got it. Okay.
Additional, also to add on to Joe's remark that we told the neighborhood that it would not be a planted area, it would be a continuation of the sidewalk, and also an opportunity for that commercial space to possibly have outdoor, if it's a restaurant, outdoor space along that sidewalk as well. And the neighborhood was favorable to that as well.
Okay.
If I can move on to Doug Owen's next comment, was a dimensional variance of 90% required for build to line defined by a building of 0% short of the required 90%. And as mentioned in the previous comment from him, we're dealing with these overhead lines and asking for a dimensional variance of 90% of the building build to line requirement. And Emily, if you are able to kind of make any sense of a little clarification for how these two kind of cross over each other. Maybe a little bit of a Venn diagram of how these two comments are related.
I mean, I think you've explained it adequately. I mean, generally they're both aimed at getting you sort of close built to the streetscape, just different measures of how the building's doing that. And in this case, it's really, there is the utility issue where that just can't be achieved. But the project is sort of meeting that spirit and intent in the best way they can with the existing utilities.
Sure. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Number 4 is the ground floor ceiling height.
Yes. So in, I think this is in form-based code. A ground floor ceiling height of 14 feet is required. We're asking for a dimensional variance of 2 feet for a ground floor ceiling height of 12 feet. This will allow us not to be having to build a taller first floor, potentially even a podium slab to build above, which would basically push the whole building much higher. And one of the comments we were discussing with the neighborhood is they had a desire not to kind of build taller than the two neighboring structures, these historic structures. So I'm going to share the screen again. So we had prepared this rendering of the proposed streetscape with our new building and the Alexandra, and Paramount is already only 2 stories along this wing, but has the big rotunda at the intersection, which is very prominent. We were trying to avoid building higher than these other buildings and keeping within that 12-foot range for the first floor ceiling height. And the community was open to that variance. I think that, you know, maybe Model could talk to or Zach to any issue about the types of tenants you might have in a commercial space if you have a 12-foot ceiling versus a 14. But we will have mechanical in the ceiling space between that dropped under that 12-foot.
Okay. Was someone else going to comment on that? Okay.
Okay, I'll move on to the next comment was a 2-foot maximum distance is required between glazing on ground floor of a shop frontage type. We're asking for a dimensional variance of 1.5 feet for a proposed 3-5-foot separation. As a condition of our previously granted variance earlier in the year, the building was designed to read as a series of buildings due to the overall length of the building. And across the Gilbert Avenue elevation, the storefront glazing is separated by 2 different size of columns. I'm going to pull back up the other elevation that I just had up. So we do have these wider kind of piers in masonry that are wider than the 2 feet that they were that zoning is requesting. But it was an intentional kind of nod to the separation in the limestone panels between glazing along the Paramount building. And all of this was, aesthetically kind of an effort to fit into a space between two historic buildings without copying or emulating direct like architectural styles, but still have kind of a rhythm and materiality that were similar.
Okay.
The next comment from zoning was for recessed entries in a shop frontage type of a maximum depth of 5 feet. A dimensional variance of 3 feet is required, and we are requesting for a proposed 8-foot recessed entry. This is at our main entry into the project for residential. If I can pull up that plan again. So we have these much shallower insets for the commercial spaces, but this is for residential. And it's also to provide a little bit of cover should you be waiting for car service or anything like that, protecting from weather. So that was the reason for the deeper setback and why we're requesting a 3-foot variance from the 5-foot requirement.
Emily, do you know the reasoning behind that? Is that just so the frontage looks more sort of consistent, or you're muted? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's that consistent streetscape, kind of that historic storefront with that shallow recessed entry.
Okay. Thanks. Anything else on that, Bob?
No.
So I will add on to that one of the requirements for the tax credits is a covered entry. And although you can provide a vestibule, a lot of times residents prefer to be outside where they can see, the bus line coming or whatever up and down the street, as opposed to being inside of a vestibule. And I think that's the intention from OFA of that.
Okay. Thanks, Zach. Okay, and the curb cut, why is that necessary?
Yeah, I think you were jumping down a couple, maybe.
I've got 7 total here.
Okay. The next one I had was a covenant or easement is required for off-street parking. Please provide the required documentation. Please provide a parking analysis showing the proposed development will not take away required parking from other uses that rely on this parking lot. The developer.
Yeah, just real quick. So that is, that's not one of the actual variances, I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Emily. I believe this is just a recommendation of the zoning staff that if I do approve these, that I attach this condition to the approval. So okay. I was going to ask you, it's fine. I was going to ask you about that anyway, whether you had any objection to that or wanted to push back on that at all. But the last variance I had was on the curb cut.
Okay. Well, I'll skip down to the curb cut and then we can talk about some of the others where we're kind of providing information or making amendments as requested. So the dimensional variance of 4 feet is required for a proposed curb cut width of 22 feet in excess of 18-foot maximum. A driveway width of 18 is restricted for purposes of vehicular ingress and egress into the property. Additionally, delivery trucks anticipated for the development and subdivision would have difficulty navigating a narrow drive of 18 feet. So therefore, we're requesting the 4-foot variance to 22-foot wide driveway. We're also coming off of a busy street of Gilbert, so I feel that that was a necessary adjustment to make.
Yeah, I think just adding on to that, it's designed, again, we mentioned that Peebles Apartments is part of, it's part of that larger Master Kroger site, which will have eventual other commercial uses. So we're trying to plan appropriately for an apron that could handle, and a curb cut that could handle larger trucks that might be making deliveries or to other areas, including Peebles on the site. So that's sort of our intent there, and anticipating possible additional traffic on site. So we're sort of planning in advance for that.
Okay. And Bob, did you want to comment on the recommendation for a documentation of the subdivision approval?
I think that was just in the works when this went through the whole review with zoning.
The subdivision has been approved. The lot split has been recorded. So we've gone through that process. Planning. I think Samantha McLean helped us get through that, and they've stamped off on the deeds. So it's already been recorded as well.
Okay. Great. All right.
And then the only other one was requesting 25 bicycle parking spaces. And I think that the developer model is going to provide those additional 5 spaces without any pushback on that.
Okay. Was that a part of Doug's recommendation, Emily?
Yes.
I think it was not included in the relief requested because they agreed to provide the extra spots. So they're not seeking relief from that.
Okay, but they need to,
Yes,
according to the code.
it was identified as deficient, but they're going to provide it rather than seek relief.
That is correct.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Anything else anyone would like to provide about the project in closing or otherwise?
I don't think that in the documentation that I sent to your office through Cassandra included the letter of support from the community, but if that would be beneficial to you in moving forward with reviewing the hearing and making a judgment, then I can send that over to you.
Yeah, I'll double check our files. If you wouldn't mind sending that over, I like to include everything, particularly from community organizations in the official record when I finalize this. So if you could send that over, that'd be great. And I don't believe I've seen it in the packet, but so that would be good.
Yeah, I didn't see it listed as an attachment, but we do have it.
Okay.
From the council.
Great. Yeah. Please, when you get a chance, go ahead and share that with me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else, guys, on this?
I think so. I think I would just close in saying that thanks for taking the time, and then also just keep in mind that this is, affordable housing, and we are working with some limited resources here, and we are trying to do our best to make it blend into the neighborhood. And we've really taken a good amount of effort to get the community on board with this. Have gone to multiple meetings and would like their continued support. So just wanted to close with that.
Okay, great. Anything else from Joe or Bob? All right. Emily, did you want to provide any zoning testimony on this?
Sure. Doug Owen's staff report really clearly articulates our findings and our recommendation of approval. Overall, we think the project is consistent with the spirit and intent of form-based code. It's activating the ground level, and it's promoting a walkable streetscape. The overhead power line proximity does necessitate some of the variances for the setbacks that are being requested. Many of the design elements and those dimensional variances are requested so that they can design a building that's consistent with the context and the character of the surrounding buildings. And ultimately, the project is in the public interest as it's providing affordable housing and meeting the requirements of those funding sources, which in some cases necessitate the variances from the code. And it's also infilling the streetscape in the business district, replacing a surface parking lot and activating that space.
Thanks, Emily. All right, so I have had a chance to review the application, the staff report. I'm very familiar with this particular section of Gilbert. So based on that and on the testimony presented here today, I am going to approve the project or the requested relief, that is. I need to formalize that decision in a written decision, as I think you all are aware of. So I will, as soon as I finish that, I put it into a PDF. I share it with everyone who's in the hearing here today. And as soon as you have that written decision, you can work with zoning to get the necessary permitting on the zoning side. Any questions right now about any of that? Okay. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out to myself or Doug or Emily. If you'd like a status update on the decision, like I said at the beginning, that usually takes about 2 weeks. Feel free to email me directly, and I'm happy to give you an update on that. But like I said, I'll share it with all of you as soon as it's finished. Okay, great. I want to thank you all for your time, your testimony here today. Good luck with the project, and hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Dave.